Hi, I'm Mike with Elite Investigations here in Billings, Montana, and this is Behind the Investigation. You know, every one of my cases has a story, but some spiral into chaos faster than you can blink. This one started like so many others, a discreet meeting, a nervous client, and a request to look into a woman he barely knew. But what unfolded wasn't just a scam. It wasn't just blackmail. It was a full-blown nightmare. One involving lies, surveillance, secret bank accounts, and a furious wife ready to burn it all down. It's the kind of case that proves no matter how powerful, how wealthy, or how careful someone thinks they are, they can still get caught in a web of deception. In this episode, you'll hear how a $16,000 used car led to threats, betrayal, and one of the most high-tense cases I've ever worked. This is episode 14, the $16,000 sugar trap, and you're watching Behind the Investigation. This next case isn't about a missing person. It's not about fraud or hidden assets. But it is one of the most unbelievable cases I've ever worked. And it came from one of my highest paying clients. He was a powerful financial executive, high profile, well known. I'd even seen him on TV. He was around 67 years old, we'll say, married, and he was trying to be very careful about his public image. And I stress the word trying. So I got a call, and he asked me to meet him at a local coffee shop. And I went there, and I walked in, and I could see a well-groomed. I noticed him right away. He had a suit on, took care of himself, and I was pretty sure I recognized him. Well, he quietly explained to me that he had met a young girl, 24 years old, on the internet. Go figure. And he admitted to me that he was looking to be in a sugar daddy relationship with this young lady. They had met once face to face, and then they communicated via text message. So I'm taking all this in. And then he says one day she texts him that her car had broken down and she was going to lose her job because she can't get to work and she needs her car and she has 2 kids. So he didn't want her to be in trouble. He felt bad. And she asked him if he would be willing to buy her a car. And she's told him she would make it worth his while. You know, they haven't even met privately. They've met in person, face to face, probably at a coffee shop, but they haven't met privately. So, and that's what he really wanted. So what did he do? Well, he took her to a local dealership and he bought her a $16,000 used car, and it was a pretty nice car. And he paid in full, and he put it in her name. He actually wrote a check. She told him to go get a hotel room and that she'd meet him there later. Well, as you can imagine, she never showed up. And he texted her and texted her and texted her, no reply. Well, then he decided to start calling her. And finally, someone answered. this, on the other end of the phone, wasn't the girl, it was a man's voice. And he said, "Stop calling my wife. And by the way, thank you for the new car. Oh, and we know where you work." And then he laughed and hung up the phone. That's when my client got stressed out. He waited a day or two, and then he decided to call me and hire me. And I asked him, I said, "Well, what do you want me to do?" Well, he wanted me to know who this woman was. He wanted to find out what her real name was, where she lived, did she really have another job, is she really married, does she have kids, and the most important, is he in, as in my client, in any danger? So with very little to go on to track this woman down, I was able to find her, and I was able to eventually find her real name and her address. She wasn't married, but she lived with the father of her 2 children. She had a criminal record, drugs, prostitution, theft, go figure. And the father of her children, well, he was a violent felon. He was convicted of narcotics and also home invasion out of the state of Illinois. So clearly, he has no qualms about breaking into people's houses. So my client panicked. He was terrified. He was worried they'd show up at his home, or worse, at his office. And he couldn't afford to lose his job. He couldn't afford to get this out in public. He needed to make sure that this girl was not going to cause him any more trouble. So he hired me for around-the-clock surveillance. I probably spent, seriously, around 2.5 months working this case exclusively for him, making sure that she wouldn't go near his home nor his work. I advised him that the cost was going to be high, and he had no problem with that. So after a while, there was no threats. There was no indication of her going near his house nor his work. So I told him that, we could probably pause the case for now. But that didn't last for long. About a month later, he called again. He told me he had just given about $10,000 to another 20-some-year-old girl, and he gave her cash so that she could go get an apartment because he wanted to avoid having to pay for hotel rooms every time they met. Well, what did she do? She took the money and ran. She blocked him, and he never heard from her again. But that wasn't the main reason he called me. He called me because in his wisdom, after 4 months or so of not hearing from the first girl, that she'd left him alone, she hadn't gone to his work, she hadn't caused trouble with him there, she hadn't caused trouble with him at his house, she hadn't texted him, she hadn't called him, no nothing. So you'd think that'd be behind him. But no. What does this guy do? He decides to reach back out to her, and she responds, and it got ugly fast. She told him, "Thank you for reaching out to me. I had lost your number, but now I got it. And now I want a new car, like a new car. Not a new used one, a new car. And she wants it right away. And if he doesn't give it to her, she's going to tell his wife. And to prove that, she sent a screenshot of his wife's Facebook page to him. And then she also sent a screenshot of his work website with his biography and his picture on the website. She knew everything about him. Now, he was panicked again. He didn't know what to do. So I laid out his options. I said, you got 3 things you can do, man. You can pay her, you can go to the FBI, or you can ignore her. You have to decide. So he asked me to feel out the FBI and see if they would take this case. I reached out to him. Took me a couple days to get a hold of an agent. Finally did. And oh yeah, they wanted this blackmail case. They wanted to run with it. Of course, my client was worried, is he in any trouble? Well, he never met her in person for the exchange of relationship and money. They talked about it, but they never did do it. So the FBI said that's a misdemeanor. They didn't care about that. They wanted to go after the girl for the blackmail. So I said, okay, let me talk to my client. By the time I got back to my client, he had called one of his old college buddies out of state who is now an attorney. And of course, the attorney tells him, do not go to the police or the FBI. Just ignore the young lady. She'll go away. If she was going to do something, she'd have already done it. So my client decided to take his advice and go that route. All right, that sounds good. Let me know how that works out for you. Well, needless to say, about maybe 4 or 5 days later, I get a call from him. I could tell there's something in his voice was wrong, and he asked me to meet him at the coffee shop again. So, of course, he was one of my most high-paying clients. So I went down to the coffee shop and met him. As I walked in, I saw him sitting there, and I saw his wife sitting beside him. And boy, did she look mad. And if looks could kill, I would have probably died at the doorway. He had his head down and wasn't looking up and making eye contact with me. So I walk up to the table, and the wife looks at me and she says, "Are you the private investigator working for my jerk husband?" And I'm downplaying the language here. You can only imagine the language that is being thrown around, but I don't think you guys need to necessarily hear it. You can use your imagination. So she points at him and says, "Are you the one working for him?" I say, "Yes, I am." Then she says, "You now work for me," and just stares at me for a minute. I look down at my client, waiting for him to, he still hasn't looked up at me. And he's got his head down and he's shaking, and you can tell he's emotionally upset. And I say, "Client," I say his name, I say, "Client, what do you say?" Because I work for him until he says otherwise. Well, he nods his head and says, "You work for her now. Do whatever she says." But then he gives me a look up at me, and the way he looked at me, I knew he didn't want me to tell her everything. But I figured, let's roll the dice and see where this goes. So she has me debrief her on everything that's happened. I tell her about the girl, and I tell her about the father of the children and the criminal records and all that. Needless to say, she became super upset. And at that point, she lost her mind. She starts hitting him, calling him names that I don't want to repeat. And she's doing this in a coffee shop. There's people all around us. And she's not being quiet about it. And the whole time he's there going, "Baby, baby, I love you, please stop, I love you. And I'm sitting there like, oh man. And I'm looking outside because I'm waiting for the blue police cars to show up. And so I tell them, "Hey, knock that off. We got to go outside. We got to get out of here because you're causing a scene. And I'm not going to stick around if the cops are coming because I don't want no part of this." So I finally get her to go outside. He's out there and he's crying now. She's yelling at me. She looks over and they had 2 Mercedes. One was a car and one was a SUV. Very nice. I assume they look like they were brand new or newer cars. She points to the cars and she tells him, "You're taking those cars today, both of them, and you're trading them in and you're getting brand new ones because I'm not going to ride into any vehicle that you had relationship with some young 24-year-old girl." And I'm just like, oh boy, dude, are you in trouble? And he's like, yes, yes, honey, I will. Please forgive me, please forgive me. I mean, it was a show. And so then she says, because when she learns about the the father of the children having the criminal record of home invasion, well, that freaked her out. So, which rightfully so. So then she says she wanted me to do 24-hour counter surveillance on this young woman to make sure that her nor her baby's father comes to their house and hurts them or assaults them or anything else. Because, they can't go to the cops because they don't want it to go public. The wife is super embarrassed and pissed. And so what can they do? So I tell her if she wants 24-hour surveillance, one, that's going to be expensive. And two, I'm going to have to bring somebody else on with me because I can't be there every day, 24 hours a day. So she says, no problem, and money's not a problem. As you can see, this is why he was one of my most paying clients. So we set up counter surveillance out by the house and watched and waited and waited and waited. About 4 days into it, I'm working a day shift. I get a text from the wife saying, come up the driveway to the garage. She'll meet me in the garage. She wants to talk to me. Okay. So I get out of my vehicle and I walk up this long driveway and I see her in the garage and she says, first thing out of her mouth is, did you know about the bank account in Florida? And I'm like, well, when he used to pay me my retainers over the past couple months that I had worked with him, he wrote me checks. And I did think it was odd, but they were checks from a bank in Florida. She says, oh yeah, guess how much money he has in that bank account? He had $3 million in a hidden bank account from his wife that she now obviously found out about. So he had a $3 million slush fund that he could use for whatever he wanted without his wife ever knowing, until obviously now. And boy, was she mad. And then I kind of was mad too, because every time I would tell him, hey, you have to re-up your retainer, we're out of money, I need more money to keep going, he would act like I was taking his last dollar out of his wallet. And now I find out he has $3 million in the bank that he could just do what he wants with. So the wife says, I want the top of the line security system around the house. I want cameras around the house. And then I suggested we put cameras out on the street so that we could watch traffic coming and going and get kind of heads up as someone's slowing down, looking at the house, staking it out. So I called a local company and they came out. We had them sign NDAs and then they installed everything for us. We had to pay extra because she wanted it done the next day. So we paid super extra to get them to drop what they were doing and send 2 techs out to do all this installation. Because mind you, their house is big. So then that goes on. So then she says to me, now I want you to watch my husband and start following him around. And I'm like, well, hold on. Not that I don't want to do that, not that he doesn't deserve for that to happen, but that's a little bit of a conflict of interest at that point in time. So I told her that I could get another investigator that I know to come in and she could just deal with him, keep me out of it, and that way she can trust what he's saying and not thinking that the husband's paying me off not to tell her things or vice versa. So I did not want to get involved in that part. So I brought in this other investigator that I know. He took that part of the case and started working that. In the meantime, me and my other investigator friend were doing the 24-hour counter surveillance on the house. So we did that for about another week or so. And then finally, when we didn't see anything around the house, the girl wasn't reaching out to the wife anymore. We kind of thought things calmed down. We started scaling back. They kept me on retainer for me to be able to respond or do some checks for them and all that. But in general, at this time, the case was wrapped up. And within a week after that, there was a for sale sign out in front of the house. And I think it was about a month or so later, I don't know, somewhere in there, they had moved away. To this day, if you're wondering, they're still married. They live in Florida, and they're still married, and the house sold, and I have never heard from him again. So that is one of my most interesting, crazy cases, I guess. One of my highest paying ones. I've got another one that we'll talk about down the road, but this was one of I made a lot of money off this. This really helped me out quite a bit. So anyways, I just wanted to share all that with you. I want to thank you for watching and thank you for sticking with me. Please keep sending in your questions and anything you want to say on my social media channels and all that. But thank you for watching. Remember, always stay curious, always ask questions, and I'll catch you on the next one.